Hey there, YC. I thought we could talk about the word power. Power in our culture often revolves around words like being determined, strong-willed. Sometimes in our culture we will even use the phrase manly or man up, as if power has nothing to do with women. And that's part of what I want us to think about and dwell on, is how these words get shaped and formed by our culture. So in YC, we're going to talk about power defined a little bit differently, less about gender or less about roles and more about where it comes from. Of course, we know that power comes from God. Another way to think about power as almost like a mathematical equation. In order to have power, we need people and resources. People are people, like my stick man who's waving at you right here, and resources are things like money or land or maybe tools, or these circles represent our different networks that we are part of. We all have our own social and work-related networks, people who we know that we can reach out to. We also know that resources can be voices, people who have voices in political environment, people who have voices in our schools or places of authority, who can use their voice to make things happen. Because ultimately what power is power is the ability to change behavior or to move things. So it's not necessarily about strength, it's certainly not about gender. It's about the ability to move. Now when we think about people and resources, one of the special aspects about resources is if we have people, we automatically have resources. So really, people equals power, and power equals people. But even if we have people with us, it's good to remember that every person comes with their own abilities, their skills, and their gifts, just like you have skills and abilities and gifts. Now, there's two kinds of power. We talk about both kinds, and I want to invite you to reflect on the two different kinds of power after watching this video. One kind of power is dominant power. This is power over, meaning that if I have people and resources, I'm going to use the resources and use the people to bring about the change in behavior, the change in process, or it's simply to move something along at my will. I don't necessarily care about the people. I really am grateful for their resources, but dominant power means I'm going after what I want. I am manipulating the power and the resources to attain my own goals. There's also relational power. Relational power, I could say, is biblical power. Now, there is dominant power all throughout the Bible, and we'll talk about that this year. We should actually go looking for some of those stories and really wrestle with where some of God's people are using power in dominant ways. Relational power is being in relationship with people, giving thanks for their resources, and together we are walking, striving for a change in behavior or a change in movement in our culture, in our community, maybe in ourselves. If we're looking to, let's say, change an aspect of our lives. Sometimes that's hard for us to do by ourselves. We can convince ourselves. I will talk about using Post-it notes that we can put up in special spots to remind ourselves of something that we want to fix or change or alter about our own lives. It is nearly impossible for a person to change something about themselves without other people, without someone in their corner, without someone showing us support and love and encouragement, telling us that we are on the right track. And they will support us with resources, and we will share our resources, and together we walk, seeking new behavior, new understandings of the world, new relationships, moving towards power that brings about positive change. So as we talk about power, we remind ourselves it's not necessarily based on gender. It's not at all based on our physical strength or physical ability or our mental ability, whatever attributes our culture might tell us power is based on. In YC, we're going to remind ourselves that power is ultimately and primarily from God, and it is of God. So we give thanks for it. We consider all the resources that we have at our reach. We'll think about the people who are around us, and we're going to think about how we use these people and resources in positive ways that build people up, that remind us and remind our neighbors that collectively God is at work, bringing about hope and life throughout creation. Here's what I want to invite you to do as we're thinking about power. Since we have so many definitions of power, so many different ways of using power, and we also see a lot of different ways of how power is used in our culture, our country, and our world, I want to invite you to do a couple things. One, I want you to flip through the news. Whether you're watching on TV, or maybe you have a tablet or a Chromebook, or if you have one of those old-fashioned paper kinds, look through the news and find a couple different expressions of dominant power and a couple different stories about relational power. And just compare them. See what the difference is between what you see as a dominant action versus one that's more of a relational and building up together action. I also want to invite you to grab your prayer journals, open up a page, blank page, and I want you to write down a time when you used dominant power. The kind of power that we are going to want to use to push someone else in a direction that we choose and they don't. Maybe we used our dominant power in order to get ahead, to keep another person behind. Maybe we used our dominant power in some sort of way that brought about someone else's disappointment, sadness, brokenheartedness. When have you used dominant power? We all do it. We all fall into that trap. So when did you do it? Write down one of those opportunities, or write down one of those times when you use dominant power, and then use that as an opportunity to also reflect on its effects and to ask for forgiveness from God. And maybe, if you feel compelled and emboldened, seek forgiveness from the person who you used dominant power with. I'll see you real soon.